Several hundred killed, maybe even thousands. That's the grim prediction of authorities in Mayotte. A tiny island in the Indian Ocean between Madagascar and the African mainland was already France's poorest overseas territory, even before it was devastated by Cyclone Chido. The megastorm has been described as the worst in nearly a century. Authorities there say they are also worried about access to food, water, and sanitation for survivors.
First came the winds and rain from Cyclone Chido. And then came the next threat, the widespread destruction left behind on Mayotte, one of France's poorest overseas territories. Rescue teams have already started to clear the debris left behind by the storm. And help is on the way from France, in the form of emergency workers and humanitarian aid. A badly needed lifeline for those who have already lost everything. We've come to get something to eat for the kids and for us adults as well. We've got nothing left. The wind's taken it all away. We had stocked up, but the wind took it. We've had no water for 3 days now, so it's starting to be a lot. We're trying to get the bare minimum to live on because we don't know when the water will come back. The full scale of the destruction is visible from the air. More than 3/4 of the island's 300,000 people live below the poverty line. Most were living in makeshift homes and slums in shanty towns, which have now all but been wiped out.
No matter how the house was built, everything here has been devastated. I think you can see it all around me. I'm actually walking through debris. People 1 day after the cyclone are already busy rebuilding their homes, but the work is going to be extremely long.
While some start to rebuild, others are left only to say their final farewells, as Mayotte starts to recover after the worst cyclone in almost a century.
Journalist Daniel Brown in Paris has reported extensively on French and African affairs. He spent time on Mayotte, so I asked him if he has heard from his contacts on the island.
Well, not directly for the last few days, Eddie. The main telecommunication operator in Mayotte reports that 99% of its fixed internet customers are disconnected, and 51 out of the 54 mobile network antennas are out of service, primarily due to power outages. But we did receive a message from someone living just outside the capital, Mamoudzou, through WhatsApp, and it's worrying. The person living in one of the more solid houses there was in tears, saying her roof had been ripped off by Cyclone Chido. The extensive damage to infrastructure means that re-establishing connectivity will take time. And remember, this Cyclone Chido was blowing at around 440 kilometers an hour when it began.
Right. Local authorities fear the worst. They say several hundred deaths, maybe even thousands. The French Interior Ministry says it's too early to give any numbers. How difficult is it to gauge the extent of the devastation?
Well, it's very hard given that lack of communications to be accurate. What we do know is that it's way beyond the initial 11 deaths that were reported. The Huffington Post in Spain indicated several hundred fatalities. And as you said, some reports even estimated to be in the thousands. What we do know is that entire neighborhoods, especially in the island's numerous shanty towns, have been flattened, and public infrastructure, including hospitals and the airport, are severely damaged.
Wow, it sounds and looks like quite a dire situation on the ground. Mayotte is considered a poor island. It's also a French overseas territory. Can you describe what it's like there?
Yes, well, the devastation caused by this cyclone is certainly exacerbating factors that are related to poor infrastructure and poor governance. I mean, you need to know that a large portion of Mayotte's population resides in informal settlements with substandard construction. They're often peopled by populations from neighboring Comoros, desperate to return to what was their ancestral homes and heritage. And despite Mayotte's status as a French overseas department since 2011, there's been chronic underinvestment in essential infrastructures. disasters, and these include housing, water supplies, and public facilities. And this neglect has left the island ill-prepared to withstand these natural disasters.
So France has already sent rescuers and firefighters. Police forces will also be deployed there. What else is needed now?
Well, I mean, we're talking about less than 1,000 military personnel and firefighters for these rescue and relief operations, which is simply not enough to even answer these emergency needs. I mean, the priorities are restoring electricity and access to drinking water, as well as repairing these critical infrastructures like the hospitals and the airports, which have sustained a significant damage. And several of my friends remain stranded here in France, unable to take any flights to Mayotte. The government's collaborating with humanitarian organizations like the French Red Cross, but while these measures try to address immediate needs, the government has not yet specified the total amount of aid or detailed long-term reconstruction plans. And we're anticipating further announcements, but they'll have to wait for accurate assessments of the cyclone's impact.
Right. We'll wait to see what comes out of that. Journalist Daniel Brown in Paris. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie.